1971, Wire and Plastic Products plc made shopping baskets. In 2022, WPP, as it's now known, is the biggest advertising firm on the planet. Sometime between then and now, specifically in 1989, Mark Reed walked through the doors and played a starring role in that transformation. In 2018, Reed became chief executive of a firm in crisis. The man who had made the giant, Martin Sorrell, had stepped down. Today we speak to Mark Reed about a new age of advertising and how to run a business fit for the 21st century. Mark, thank you so much for joining us on Leaders with Lacqua. What does it mean being an ads man, an ad leader in 2022?
Well, I mean, our industry is at such a interesting phase, isn't it? And we've just been through the pandemic. We've come out, I think, in many ways ever more relevant, but we face a whole period of continued innovation in our industry with new advertising formats, new digital companies being launched, e-commerce taking off. Our industry is changing. I mean, it changes all the time, but it's changing now, I think, more than ever. But
if you look at the pace of change over the last 10 years, I mean, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
Can you go through the same pace of change in the next 10 years?
I think so. I mean, look, we're a big company. We have 100,000 people around the world, but we try to also have the heart, if you like, of a small company, to be very responsive. We have people day to day working on individual clients, working on client briefs. So I think that it's that trick, isn't it? How we get the scale of a big company, but also how we operate quickly and nimbly.
Other rivals are very focused on spending in tech. What's the future for WPP?
Well, I think what makes WPP special is creativity, it's ideas. You know, without ideas, there's nothing on these tech platforms. What would there be on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube without, you know, creative work and creative ideas and all the things that creative people flourish? So I think that creativity is what makes WPP distinctive and kind of where we want to invest. Now, of course, with technology, how we bring those ideas to life, where they live, where they exist, that's changing very quickly. So it's really about sort of building up what you could call the traditional skills, if you like, of the past, but blending them with a real understanding of data and technology that you need in the future.
So your role is changing, I guess. Is it still just pure advertising, or is it more advising clients and kind of navigating these uncertain times?
WPP is much more of an advertising company today than we used to be. Now, clearly, advertising is important to what we do, and you started with, I think when I go to customs, the customer says, what do you do? I say, I work in advertising, but actually WPP is much more than an advertising company today. We're as likely to be asked by a client, you know, how do I succeed on Amazon, as we are, what do you think of this television ad? So we've had to learn a tremendous number of new skills over the last 10 years, as you say.
So what happens in the next 5 years? Again, is it going to be Amazon? Is it going to be Twitter? Is there something else that will be the hot new thing?
Well, there's one good thing about we don't need to make, in a way, we don't need to make those decisions, because consumers will decide, and we need to be where consumers are. So it's our job, I think, to understand all of those platforms and help our clients understand what's most relevant, where can they reach their consumers most effectively, what's going to deliver the higher return on investment. You know, we're very data and technology and fact driven today. So it's both the creative idea, but also the financial returns are important.
How did you end up in advertising?
Well, I sort of by mistake, really. Like many
good
things.
Mistake or a bad mistake?
Well, I left university. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wrote to a few sort of business leaders and companies, and I ended up working at WPP in the very early days. And I think when I started, I never thought I'd end up sort of sitting in this seat, if you like, at all. No.
What do you like most about your job?
I think the people. I mean, ultimately, we're a people business. We have clients who are people, we have creatives who are people, we have technologists who are people, and a lot of what my job is as CEO of the company is to give those people sort of motivation, to tell them where we're going, to encourage them to come up and do their best work, to encourage them to collaborate. But ultimately, you know, the job is as much sort of, sometimes you sort of think you're almost a psychologist, you know, as you are a business leader, I think, sometimes.
And so what's your best piece of advice? I don't know if it's psychological terms, but if there's a deal that you need to get or an account that you need to get that you're worried will go to a rival, what's your pep talk like?
My pep talk, well, I love pitches. I love being sort of leading from the front, if you like, and spending times with teams. I love to see the work that we're doing. When we pitch for a piece of new business, often when we come together. So I guess I try and put myself in the seat of the client. Now, what's the client going to think when they see this work? Are they going to be excited? Is it going to turn their brand around? How's it going to resonate with their consumers? So as much as possible, I think probably I try and play that role.
So how have clients changed actually over the years that you've been in advertising? Do they ask for different services now because the challenges are so much bigger?
I think clients have a tough time, don't they? You know, we've never lived through a period of so many crises. They're trying to manage enormous budgets, vast global enterprises. So they need trusted advisors, and I think that's kind of in a sense what they're looking to WPP and to our agencies and to our people to bring. You know, a real sense of, if we do this, what will the impact be? You know, from packaging through to advertising, through to public relations, through to design, and then in many, many new skills. You know, the days of old, if you like, you know, a lot of this was a matter of judgment. Now we're much more data-driven than we used to be. We'll look at market research figures, we'll measure the return on investment, we'll use digital media, you know, in that way as well. So they've become, I think, much more analytically driven than perhaps they used to be.
What's the biggest challenge going forward? Is it, if you look at some of the technology companies, Twitter, Facebook, is that still where the future lies?
Well, it's interesting, you know, in the first 6 months of this year, if you look at WPP, we've actually grown more quickly than the average of the four sort of tech ad companies, you know, Google, Meta, Snap, and Twitter. So in a funny way, the challenges they faced are somewhat different from the challenges that we've faced. You know, we tend to have bigger, more global clients. We're not so reliant on venture capital funded startups. So I think we're coming into the future really in quite a good position, and actually there are going to be a lot of opportunities for us.
Who do you see as your biggest rival?
You know, we compete with our traditional rivals, we compete with the consulting companies, we compete with some clients that try to do some of this work in-house. So, look, the great thing about our industry is it's always been competitive. You know, two people in a garage can start up an agency, they have done over many years. But I think that for the major clients that we service today, you know, we're in a really good position. You know, we just came off the back about a year ago winning the global mandate for the Coca-Cola company, and they looked at and tested every element of what we do as a business, from can we develop great creative work in China or India or South Africa, to can we embrace, you know, the media revolution, to can we show them how to partner with Facebook and Google and how to embrace TikTok, and every part of our business, and selected us as their partner. I think that talks to the sort of power we have and the scale that we have.
Is it more difficult now because of the cost of living crisis, because of the economic downturn? Do you start feeling it already?
Look, I think, you know, as I speak to you today, I think clients' spend is amazingly resilient actually. And you know, we can look at next year and we can worry about next year, and it's easy. I sort of learned not to worry about things I can't control. You know, I can't control the economic environment. All I can do is put WPP and our clients in the best position to navigate it. When I look at it like that, I think, well, actually, what we do is super relevant. You know, clients have got to demonstrate to consumers what they're doing. You know, we're working with supermarkets to demonstrate how they can help customers save money. Clients have got to innovate. They've got to, in many cases, put price increases through. So I think the need for marketing isn't going to go away. No, there's no doubt the next 12 months will be challenging, but I think we'll come out of it, as we've done before, in a stronger position.
Up next, clients and consumer. The ad man must speak to both. With people asking ever more from brands, we look at the balance between profit and values. Leadership is key for any firm's success, particularly in a creative industry. With more than 100,000 employees globally, how do you run a small city as a coherent business? We continue the conversation with WPP Chief Executive Mark Reed. So as we look forward to 2023, what do clients ask you the most? You know,
we talk to clients about how much we're going to spend next year, what's the economic outlook going to be, and I think that's really the period of great uncertainty. I think what we say to clients is, you know, those that have done well should continue to support their brands, because that's ultimately what they need to do. And as we saw even during the pandemic, those companies that sort of cut their marketing quickly found it hard to reinstate. So I think we say to clients, you know, don't be fiscally irresponsible, if you like, but do continue to invest behind your business, invest behind your brands, and that's really what they're coming to us, ask us how to do that. But how to do that in 2023 means different things, right?
Yep.
What do I do on TikTok? How do I succeed on Amazon? How do I manage my reputation? How important are these influencers that we're talking about? And they're very different questions from 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah. So let's say I had a 10 million budget, right? And I wanted to, touch the U.S. consumer, not alienate China, and kind of keep my reputation intact. How do I deploy that money?
Well, you start. What products are you in, Francine? What's the product?
What should I be in? Let's say energy drink.
So look, we're working with a number of soft drinks companies. Look, I think you've got to have a great idea. So you've got to start with what does the product stand for, and what does it mean to consumers. I still think you've got to look across the media mix. I mean, it's interesting. People talk about the death of television, but in some ways, television's being reinvented, isn't it? Netflix are taking TV ads. Disney Plus is going to accept advertising. So those channels, I think, remain super relevant. I think you've got to understand, creativity today in a very different way before. We're trying to embrace different creative disciplines, from partnering with people from Hollywood. We've just done a partnership between the Coca-Cola company and Marshmallow on a new drink, or understanding what's going on in the worlds of fashion or sport. Those are also very interesting to do. Then you've got to understand how you're going to reach the consumer. You're going to go through Walmart, or you're going through Amazon, or you're going to build your own distribution channels. And I think these are all questions in a way that, that WPP can help you answer.
Do I have to have a chief executive a political point of view? So do I need to, do I have to call out things that are morally wrong in my eyes?
No, look, I don't think that brands necessarily have to have a political point of view, but I think brands have to understand what's going on in society, what consumers care about, and how what they do is relevant to them. And we did a study, Mindshare, our media agency, did a study, and it said 82% of consumers care about how brands sort of treat people, treat social issues, take a position on those. So you have to think about, energy consumption. What's your policy on sustainability? What's your packaging policy? How do you treat your people? Where are you going to sell your product, and who are you going to sell it through? So I think those issues are important. I rather think of them about purpose than about them being political, if you like.
But are those real changes?
Absolutely, they're real changes. I mean, if I look at our
CEOs
people,
mean it.
Well, I think CEOs do mean it. Certainly, I mean it. And when I think about WPP, we have 100,000 people. I said they're passionate about these topics. They want to know, where do we stand on many of these sort of social or political or societal issues. I think societal is probably a good definition of them rather than political.
How will the Qatar World Cup actually change advertisers and the relationship with some of the big sporting events?
Well, I think that our advice to clients is really to think about the World Cup as a football celebration, and to get behind football and get behind fans. Now, clearly the controversies around the host nation are problematic, but I think our advice would be really as far as they can just to focus on the football and the support for the football. And it's difficult, I agree.
How do you navigate China?
We have a big business in China. We also have a big business in Taiwan. Again, I was reassured by some of the moves in the Biden meeting recently with President Xi in Bali. I think that's positive, but it's difficult.
Mark, there's something that struck me that you said, which of course you would advise clients not to spend less in advertising because it's then difficult to ramp it up. Are you talking? Is it like slots? Like when you go to Heathrow, if you lose a slot, then you don't get it back, or is it just if you rein in too much, then it's difficult to get the eyeballs needed to sell more?
I don't think so. Look, there was that old adage, I know half my advertising works. I don't know which half. I think increasingly we know much more about what works and what doesn't work for clients. And so I think we can look at certainly in much of digital media what the impact is. Do clients buy things? Do consumers buy things, or do they not buy things? So I think that a lot of the sort of uncertainty in our industry has been taken away by the use of data to measure results.
And this is online.
Online, but also offline. I mean, offline media, we know we have many rules of thumb to understand how to use offline media.
I mean, I know I get pop-ups for stuff when I talk. I mean, is my phone spying on me, Mark? Because I talk about something that I have in advertising. Is that the way that technology is going to go? Not necessarily the spying bit, but actually being able to tell me what I want to buy.
I think we've been very clear. I think that consumers expect a right to privacy.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of a non-negotiable, and I think certainly something that we, try to push through all our work and everything we do with clients. I think at the same time, advertising needs to be relevant, and if it's more relevant, it's more useful to you. And so we can use data in a way to make advertising more relevant, but we have to do it in a way that's transparent to consumers, that doesn't misuse their data. I think all of those things are possible in what we're doing, really.
So what's the model for the future? I know there's also, and we did a piece on this on Bloomberg, when you go into a shop and I think that the mannequin is basically scanning your eyes. So if you're looking at the shoes for an extra 3 seconds, then that's what pops up in the iPad that you're going around with.
Well, I wouldn't advise anyone to do that. Look, I think that the cookie was invented for many reasons, but it became this kind of universal way of, in a way, as you say, tracking or spying on consumers. And I think that moving away from the cookie is a good thing in terms of online privacy. There's only so much targeting you can do. Most of the world buy products from the Coca-Cola company. There's only so much targeting they need to do to be effective. And so I think sort of ultra targeting that's become sort of spooky is not helpful, frankly. It's not helpful to our clients. We wouldn't advise them to do it.
But if it's Coca-Cola, everybody knows it. What about a smaller brand? My energy drink that I wanted to sell that no one knows about.
Well, there's many ways you can build a relationship with consumers. It has to be a value exchange, doesn't it? Do they follow you on Instagram? Do they follow you on Twitter? What's the value exchange? And I think if there's a value exchange, then consumers will give you and let you use their data.
Up next, with recession universally forecast, how does the ad industry weather the storm? Mark Reed on selling in the age of inflation. It's been the age of the black swan. A global pandemic, war in Europe, rampant inflation. How is the world's biggest ad firm positioning for a slowdown? Is there I don't know whether there's an interesting client that you'd like to do more of, or even a client. Is there someone that you would love to have in the books that you don't have yet?
Oh, I'm sure there is. I mean, look, we do fantastic work. I mean, I love all of our clients equally.
Of course, like your children. No favorite.
Look, I think an interesting. Tesla's an interesting company. So far, they haven't spent money on advertising. I'm sure one day they will. I mean, I think Jeff Bezos said back in 2009, advertising is what companies do when they have nothing to differentiate themselves. And Amazon today is one of the world's top 5 advertisers. So I think that companies develop and they come to a point of view where they need to talk to consumers about what they do, why they're relevant, what they have to sell. I think all of those things make what we do valuable. I
mean, it's interesting, right? If you look at the life cycle of a business, and I guess the ability for that business to be disrupted, when's peak advertising moment? When's the right time to really go for it?
Well, just look at the technology companies. Google, Amazon, Apple are some of the world's biggest advertisers, and they certainly didn't start that way. So I think that we've learned that in the modern world, differentiation's increasingly difficult. It's increasingly difficult to do just based on technology or product feature alone. But actually brands, what people think of a company, what they stand for, what they do, that really matters. And I think that's what we're trying to do through advertising.
What was the most difficult day in your job? Do you remember that day?
Probably the first day. I mean, nothing prepares you to be CEO of a public company. I'd worked for WPP for a long time. As I said, it wasn't a position I expected to come into. And if we face it, the company had a few challenges when I started. We hadn't grown. Our debt was probably too high. We were quite complicated as an organisation. And so, if I look back now on that time, just over 4 years ago, I'm pretty proud of what we've all done, collectively as a team, and it really has been, a collective effort. It's quite an interesting thing, I think.
Yeah, and your predecessor was Sir Martin Sorrell, so that was also, I guess, a challenge.
Well, no, he'd been in the company a long time, but I think when you take on a role, you do it in a different way, don't you? You do it in a way that's right for you. And I looked at where we were, and I think that one of the challenges was, how do we integrate analog and digital, right? Because that's sort of something where we've become quite complex. So we brought Wunderman and J. Walter Thompson together to create Wunderman Thompson. We brought VML and Y&R together to bring, to create VML Y&R, 2 big integrated agencies that could help clients across the full range of marketing spectrum to integrate analog and digital. So I think that was the first thing that was important. Then I think secondly, we really wanted to expand what we did beyond advertising. We realized if we just in the advertising box, we weren't going to grow. So we expanded our offer into e-commerce, into commerce, into building experiences for clients, and much more deeply into technology. And we've been on that journey really of sort of reinvention of our traditional businesses, but also expansion into new areas so the company can grow its top line.
Is it better being bigger because you service your clients in more industries and you have more of that data, or does it not make that much of a difference?
Well, I think what's interesting is the definition of scale and the competitive advantage of scale has changed. It used to be sort of buying power, buying muscle. You know, we buy $60 billion of media around the world. That would give us certain leverage with media owners we'd use on behalf of our clients to get better prices.
Yeah.
Today's scale comes from data and from technology, and leveraging that technology investment and that data and that insight over multiple clients. So I think scale helps, but come back to the point I made earlier, we've also got to be nimble and smart and quick because our business is day-to-day interactions with individual clients. So that's the challenge, is how we sort of create that scale without becoming, you know, a big, dare I say, bureaucratic organization, which is the last thing I want to run.
Mark, how does advertising spending look like next year? So in the US, and again, is there anything really to rival the US in terms of consumer spending or advertising spending?
Well, the US is the biggest market. Together, I think the US and China are about 50+% of the global advertising market, heading in different directions. You know, the US expected to be relatively resilient next year. China, we're not sure, maybe another tough year. You know, global ad spend this year I think will be up 6 or 7%. Expectations next year are up 5 to 6%, so slightly slower, but don't forget inflation's now 6%. So, you know, we're used to looking at things in nominal terms, but we forget to take off inflation, which sadly is a little bit higher than it used to be. So I think it's sort of a relatively challenging year next year, but I think that things have proven a lot more resilient than people expect. So we'll have to see, I think, is how the year unfolds.
Do you think 2023 is the hardest year, or 2024 could be even harder if there's a lag effect in some of these inflationary
Look, I think 2020 was a pretty difficult year, so we go through difficult years. There's many reasons to be optimistic, I think, about the future of our industry. It comes back to the types of questions the clients are asking us. They're much more significant, they're much more important. You know, the secret of success of any company is to grow. And I think that we, WPP, and our industry more broadly, can be really at the heart of a client's growth. You know, how do they succeed with consumers? How do they reach them in new areas? How do they innovate? How do they create new brands? Those questions are going to be just as relevant next year. You know, this whole digital transformation is going to continue. So these things aren't going to go away.
So what's the secret sauce of being a great chief executive? Do you empower? Do you micromanage? Like, what are you like as a chief executive?
I like to empower. I mean, I can't do it all on my own. And as I say, you know, I need to get the best out of the people I work for. So I'd like to sort of, as I said, lead a little bit from the front, spending time with clients, spending time in pitches. You know, we are a competitive industry. You know, we're in pitches day to day. We win or lose business. So I think that we have to do that. But I also have to create a company which is collaborative. I don't think there's a tension between people that want to win, people that want to collaborate, but that's what we're trying to do, you know, a desire to do great work, to really push the boundaries from clients, but also a desire to work together, because sometimes, you know, no one person has a monopoly of the ideas.
Where will you be in 5 years?
I think that in 5 years we'll look different and the same. You know, things will be the same. I think it's our belief in creativity, you know, investments in data and technology, but we'll probably be a slightly bigger business. You know, today we're 11,000 people in India, 6,000 people in Brazil, 7,000 people in China. I think those numbers will increase. They'll probably increase faster than the number of people that we have here in the UK or in the US. I mean, we're a UK company in a sense, but we're really a global company that's headquartered in the UK. The UK today is only 12% of our business. No, I don't know that will be wildly different, but I think we'll be bigger in other parts of the world.
Mark, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Francine. Thank you.